But not just the throne. Look what it says in verse 2. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. Look what I wrote. Now remember, what I'm doing is I'm doing your project for you, a version of it. This is the devotional thought I found reading verses 2 to 7. And I wrote it down by hand in my journal, and then I typed it so you could read it, because, I have messy handwriting. The Father that we all need is the one seated on the throne of heaven. I don't know who your father is. Some of you might not even know who your father is. Some of you might have wonderful fathers. Some of you might have fathers that you aren't even in touch with because that was awful. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what our Father on earth, it doesn't have to matter what our Father on earth is like. It does matter, but it doesn't have to matter. Once we understand that the Father that we all need, the one that comforts us, protects us, provides us, loves us, encourages us, cheers us on, that Father, the one that's out there that never missed one of your games, the one that's out there that said you were the best at everything you did, the one that you admired because you'd look on them in a crowd and you say, that's my Father. Whether you ever experience that, we have that one. And he is more in love with us. Your earthly father didn't really design you. He was a part of the process, but the designer is your real Father. And he is seated on the throne. And Jesus wanted John, the early churches, and all the churches, that's us, to see that God was seated on his throne. In this chapter, and all the way through the book of Revelation. Well, let's understand our Father. Back up. Back up. You guys are going to get done early if I don't stay on the right page. Number one, our Father's one on the throne. He says that in Matthew 5:16. I went through, read the Sermon on the Mount in one of my many times reading through the Bible, and I started noticing this repeated verse 16 of chapter 5, let your light so shine before men, they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And I thought, wow. And then I get a little bit further. When it talks about in verse 34, 45, and 48, it says, verse 34, I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne. And there's that throne thing. And then in on and on, you can go through all of these. But Jesus, remember, spent his time in the Sermon on the Mount pointing at our Father in heaven. Matthew 10:29 says something, and this is fascinating, and your use of Greek language will bless you even more. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. Do not fear those who kill the body. They can't kill your soul. But fear him who can destroy both your soul and body in hell. And then Jesus says this. I mean, that was a very scary thing in 28. Now 29. Aren't 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground? Now, if you just had your English translation, you'd think, oh, that's in Mexico City where the birds, because of the pollution, are falling to the ground and dying. You know, it's interesting, if you look up this word, actually, the most used form of this word is not falling dead, hopping, literally. God doesn't just know when birds die. By know, it speaks of his omniscience. He doesn't learn. Remember, omniscience means God never learns anything. He doesn't count anything. He's never surprised by any new discovery. He knows all things completely from the beginning. But he knows every time birds hop on the ground. Wow. Our Father knows each hop of every bird on earth all the time. Wow. And so what does Jesus tell us to do because of that? Chapter 6, starting in verse 9. After he introduces our Father, he says, but you, in verse 9, in this manner, therefore, pray. 73 Greek words in the Lord's Prayer. Amazing. By the way, 1/3 of them, 25 of those Greek words, deal with sin. It's fascinating, which is something we need to think about. To approach our Father in heaven, we have to have clean hands and pure hearts. But in this manner, therefore, pray. And then he goes through the Lord's Prayer. So let's talk about that.